That's my best friend.
Comedian Chris D'Elia was on cloud nine with the birth of his first child and a newly released special on Netflix, which most comedians would be jealous of. He featured on the show You, where he played a character too close to his supposed reality. As they say, there is no such thing as a coincidence. There is no doubt that he was at the peak of his career, booking roles left, right and centre. But on the 16th of June, this all came crashing down when a woman named Simone Rossi released improper messages she received from Chris D'Elia when she was 16, citing that she was groomed. In the last few years, we have seen an influx of entertainers being called out for improper behaviour, which marks the Me Too movement created by Tarana Burke in 2006. But it was in 2017 when #MeToo became viral on Twitter, leading to the crucifixion of men like Harvey Weinstein, Kevin Spacey and Bill Cosby, two of which have been charged and imprisoned. The movement was celebrated by women who spoke about the average men in their lives who had attacked them. But as Hollywood does, it was spun into a movement that only focused on celebrities, and through that movement we saw many false allegations, leading to the movement becoming somewhat tarnished. 3 years later, countless men have been called out for misconduct, and Chris D'Elia was one of them. On the 16th, Simone released a tweet saying, "I still can't believe Netflix cast Chris D'Elia as the file in season 2 of You, like the literal irony." And the following day she put out the messages shared between the two of them, which were a collection of Chris asking the 16-year-old to meet up and to make out. Do people still phrase it like that?
No, no, I ain't old like you. I ain't old. I ain't old.
She then followed up with a thread on Twitter detailing her thoughts during that time. She wrote, "For the longest time, I thought it was embarrassing for me that I was interacting with this older man, but he was the one who DM'd me on Twitter, and was the one who was twice my age, and was the one that used the power imbalance between us to his advantage. So F Chris D'Elia." This tweet led to a lot of hate, of course, with many people saying she's lying or that she's just bitter. She then followed up by saying, "I just want to say I don't give an F if you don't believe me. Stop asking me to further talk about the grooming and my experience in order for you to believe me. My voice and the voices of countless other young girls and women should be enough." Simone went on to give more details about her exchanges to People magazine, where she said, "When I was 16, I replied to a picture that Chris had tweeted. I'm pretty sure I said cute, and he immediately DM'd me on his verified Twitter account and email address, and the words use it. Hence why in some of the emails I posted the subject line is use it," she told the publication. "I used a laughing emoji at one point and he said, 'What's with that emoji?' So then I switched to a kissy face emoji. That was the majority of our conversation from the summer of 2014, when Chris would have been 34. She goes on to say, "Then on New Year's Day 2015, that's when he asked to hang out. He asked for my Instagram at that point and began following me. My Instagram at the time was full of pictures of me at high school, pictures of me and my friends, and other images you would expect a high schooler to post. It also had my high school name in my bio, as I was in the student government, and that was something I often flaunted." She goes on to say, "This gives me reason to believe that he knew I was underage, and I also personally believe that's why he pursued me. He eventually unfollowed me and never talked to me again after I didn't end up meeting with him or sending him naked pictures. The last emails I have are from January 2015. I was still 16, she claimed. Chris's team refuted this by releasing correspondence between the pair, including an email from October 2019 in which Rossi allegedly wrote to D'Elia saying, "I'm 21 now," and DTF. His reps say D'Elia didn't respond to her. And this email in particular has been the main argument used to poke holes in Simone's allegations. And then all of the other allegations came flooding in from young women all across America. They shared very similar situations they had with Chris. It was a lot of at least 30-year-old Chris D'Elia contacting barely legal women or even underage ones to meet up and hook up, creating a succinct timeline of the sort of man he was a few years ago. I can't go into all of the other allegations because there are a ton of them, but there is a thread where you can view them. So the term barely legal is one I've seen floating about Twitter. It's just the idea that there are men in their 30s to 40s who connect with girls who have just turned the legal age. Tiger is sweating right now. Which follows into the next story of mostly 18-year-old women calling out Chris for pushy texts and asking for too much. People have argued that these particular women are 18. They could have just not responded and they had the autonomy to say no. So now let's get into Chris's response to all of these allegations. In a statement first obtained by TMZ, D'Elia denied the allegations and said that he had never knowingly pursued any underage girls at any point. "I know I've said and done things that might have offended people during my career, but I have never knowingly pursued any underage girl at any point. All of my relationships have been both legal and consensual, and I have never met or exchanged any inappropriate photos with the people who have tweeted about me. That being said, I am truly sorry. I was a dumb guy who absolutely let myself get caught up in my lifestyle. That's my fault. I own it. I've been reflecting on this for some time now, and I promise I will continue to do better. But this statement was called out for being deflective since he didn't own up to any illegal behavior, which, duh, he doesn't want to go to prison. Him minimizing all of his actions to being dumb is interesting. It makes it seem like he was a young guy accidentally talking to very young women, but no, he was in his mid-30s. I think a better phrase than dumb would have just been knowingly creepy. His statement truly wasn't any different from any other statements we've seen from other celebs in the past. Regardless of the legal implications, Chris D'Elia was branded as a creep and he quietly went away. Another notable case was Colleen Riley, who he met in 2014 when she was 16. After inviting her to LA to make out, she told him, "Chris, I'm 16," and Riley posted this exchange on Twitter, but she didn't include his response. In his actual response, he said, "Oh I thought you were at my stand-up show. Gotta be 18 to get into that at least. My bad. Bye." A representative of D'Elia told Daily Mail, "It is important that the public has all the information to make an informed decision on the coordinated attacks on Chris D'Elia. Emails are being publicly circulated, but communications containing crucial messages are intentionally not being shared. These messages help prove that all of Chris's relationships were both legal and consensual. With the recent wave of numerous Twitter accusations proven false, please reserve judgment until you have all the information." This statement from his rep is kind of flawed, and since they know that all of his relationships were legal and consensual. We don't know that. I'm sure there's plenty of other relationships that weren't caught with evidence. I think that is kind of wrong of them to say, but that's what they went with. But anyway, this idea of Chris being slimy was not first mentioned in June of last year. Comedians around him have joked about how he has a cult of women supporting him. Theo Von and Bren Schwab on their podcast He King and The Sting in 2019 said,
I don't trust those motherfuckers.
And Chris D'Elia's cult, bro?
I don't trust them either.
That ain't gonna end well. That thing is gonna end
with everyone drinking Kool-Aid except Chris, and everyone dies.
Well, a lot of the people are gonna be drinking Kool-Aid because they're underage girls, probably. That's why I'm guessing. It's just in their natural diet pattern.
And yes, these are jokes, and I'm not saying his friends knew exactly what he did in the past, but you know the saying, every joke has some truth in it. It seems like because of his status and popularity within the comedy scene, his predatory behavior was swept to the side, since he probably wasn't doing it at the time of being friends with these guys, but I don't know, it just doesn't sit right with me. It is difficult to critique jokes since humor is always subjective, but for Chris to make jokes about this subject matter is strange when you look at his past. But Chris has been telling these jokes for years with no issues, and other peoples in the comedic scene seem to have accepted that Chris is a bit sleazy, or maybe he can make those jokes since he never actually did anything with any underage girls. We don't know that, since no legal action has actually taken place. So now let's discuss what other comedians have said about this situation. Whitney Cummings, who was actually very close to Chris, since they both starred in the show Whitney, which ran for 2 seasons on NBC before being cancelled in 2013, Whitney took her time with her response. She said, "It's taken me a couple of days to process the information I have learned about Chris. I'm devastated and enraged by what I've read and learned. This is a pattern of predatory behavior. This abuse of power is enabled by silence. Now that I'm aware, I won't be silent. Girls should be able to be a fan of a comedian they admire without being a target. It's the adult's responsibility to be an adult." Emma Arnold, an artist, tweeted, "When I was a brand new comic, one of D'Elia's best friends warned me to never send Chris nudes because he made them into memes and showed them to other male comics at shows." Popular comedian Amy Schumer, who did not directly name Chris, said, "Brave women coming forward about the mistreatment they have experienced at the hands of comedians or in any other profession, especially the ones who weren't of legal age to consent. There are great men out there, and there are men who humiliate and abuse women and girls because of a power dynamic, or because when they were that age, girls wouldn't talk to them. Whatever your reasoning is or was, we are watching you and we are all together now, and we won't accept this behavior whether you break the law or not." His close friends Bobby Lee and Andrew Santino said on their podcast Bad Friends this,
"I think that that kind of behavior is abhorrent. I resent it, and it's not good."
No, it was awful and shocking and very, quite frankly, taken us all aback. I mean, we called each other, and you sit in disbelief because you don't know. We don't know this stuff, and we're finding this stuff out at the same time people are, and people are throwing around questions to everybody. Terrible. We don't know.
I haven't. We haven't slept. I mean,
And
it's
what
just-
we know now
Yeah.
is we're it's really disappointing. It's really sad, and I think all we can say is we hope he gets help, and that's it. And that's all we can say. I mean, I like, you know.
That's all we
Yeah.
can say. Yeah.
In September, Theo Von and Bobby Lee directly spoke about the Chris D'Elia situation.
I mean, even after what happened with D'Elia, like a lot of the stuff that got shared about him,
What?
a lot of the stuff that got shared about him, none of
Yeah.
it was illegal stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and they just they're like, oh, what about this 22-year-old woman that he was communicating with? And you're like, well, there's nothing, you know. It might be
That's, you know,
there's a difference between being a dog of a man and being a pervert or a criminal perv.
but I want to say one thing, which I'm trying to gather the words, is that the allegations are shocking, but I do have to say that he's just personally one of the nicest, generous, good guys that I've ever met in the business. You know, him and his family have only been, even, you know, when I was struggling and stuff, the sweetest people, and he's only been the sweetest guy.
Yeah, it shouldn't mean just because we talk about someone that it means like we don't like support somebody that if somebody was taking advantage of.
Yeah, I don't support the behavior, right? That's the behavior. If someone's victimized, you know what I mean? I'm on their fucking side. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just saying that why can't I say too, you know what I mean, that he is just my opinion about him, you know? It's like,
Yeah, totally.
And then we have Andrew Schultz and Akash Singh, who joked about the whole thing because they're comedians.
You know what I mean? Out here defending pedophiles and shit. You know what I'm saying? Not pedophile. It's a crazy word to put on anybody.
Yeah.
That's a crazy word, but
Not
you know,
not pedophile.
I'm motherfucker cutting it close. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know them races where like that the 100-meter dash or some shit where the guy leans, like he leans his chest forward so he can cross the finish line first.
that's a photo
That's
finish.
D'Elia at your 18th birthday.
That's what he has girls doing pictures so they can pretend they got titties. Just lean your chest forward, make it look like you're 2 years older than you are.
Real talk. The second a bitch takes a breath for her 18th birthday candles, the second you hears it just go, he's right in there. Like, hey, how you doing?
He comes in like Kramer on their 18th birthday.
Say what?
He comes in like Kramer on their 18th birthday.
And there were a whole other bunch of reactions, but these were the most standout ones to me. Many of these comedians were called out for not having Chris's back, and some of them were shunned for not speaking out earlier, since it's believed that many of them knew all of this, but who knows? It seems like those who were on Chris's side argue that the women he was talking to were all over 18, and if they weren't 18 yet and he found out, he quickly stopped talking to them. But to counter that argument, like Simone Rossi pointed out, Chris would have seen that she had a 16-year-old's Insta profile, which had high school pictures all over it, and still decided to DM her, unless somehow he thought she was a senior who was 18. But why even take the risk, especially when you're 30? I don't know, this narrative that he didn't know just doesn't sit well with me. It seems like he only backs away when their young ages were shoved in his face, and he couldn't not say no. Since all of this came out in June of 2020, Chris went silent after his statements denying allegations. He was dropped by Netflix and other streaming platforms which have pulled his content, which featured D'Elia. From Hulu, Amazon, Comedy Central, they are no longer hosting an episode of the comedy show Workaholics. He was also dropped by his agent CAA, and he has since left his podcast to rot and hasn't been working on any other projects publicly. He almost just allowed himself to be cancelled. Maybe his silence is a sign of guilt, or he just can't be bothered to put in the work to show the other side. I assume that he's actually getting some help or plans on waiting until he can come back for redemption. I think to end off the video, we should look at the public perception of this whole situation. A lot of the comments I saw were actually cheering on the women who had the confidence to speak out, but the other side were people calling out the comedians that went against Chris. Some of the comments read, Chris D'Elia is going to find out who his real friends are after all of this. Another read, pathetic seeing comments who always buddied up and praised D'Elia earlier on podcasts now claim they weren't even close to him and felt something off about him. I don't think he should be permanently cancelled. I think he should just be made fun out of for the weirdo he is. Another comment read, Chris's friends bailed on him to save their sponsors and he broke no laws apparently. Also, details emerged showing his most vocal accusers have not posted entire conversations that rebut their accusations. I'm no fan of Chris or his behaviour, but this seems overblown. And that's the end of those comments. So, at the end of the day, no legal action has actually taken place, so we don't get to see how this case would play out in the courts. Instead, we are seeing it play out in the public court of social media. Let me know what you think about this whole thing in the comments below. Thank you for patiently watching the video and have a great day, guys.